No,
It started. Now the questions will
say
come
something.
here. Yes.
Should we, who say something, they or we?
No, they will type first and
They
then.
will
No,
type
but
the question.
can I start something or
You
can I
can start
speak?
speaking. Yeah, you are
So
already live.
they are able to listen to me? Okay.
Also, it's live. They are able to listen.
Huh?
They are able to listen you and see you both.
Okay. So I can just start. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope that the participants are able to hear me. Just
Somebody written hello.
okay.
You have said good afternoon, so he has written
Okay. So I just wanted to say before we start this live session on the clinical trial course that if there are questions which are not exactly covered under the new drug and clinical trial rules, but there are something which is out of the syllabus, and if I have some observations or if I have made some comments on such requirements, that would be completely considered as my personal views on this matter, and it should not be connected to the views of CDSU or the organization or the regulatory authorities. So this is the disclaimer before I start my session. Thank you. So we can take your questions.
No, but we are not able to listen anyone.
Garbade. Learning error.
It is showing some error. Please choose a keyframe frequency of 4 seconds or less. Currently they are not, but earlier they have talked a bit.
18 people can view. Now it became 16. One like is also there.
So can't we listen the audience?
No. They will type the question here.
Okay. Okay.
Specific thing. I'll type it there. Come here.
Good question. For learners.
Okay.
Related to your chapter.
If I want to say something, no, let them ask the questions if they have any. Dear learners, please interact with the professor. Now it is right. Ask.
Please type.
Achha, he is writing. Interact with the trainer, professor.
Because they use the term professor.
Okay.
So you can type any question here.
But,
Just to kickstart it.
but let them start. I just told, but if you say the disclaimer, if you want to type the disclaimer, you can type. That the views of the regulator is her views and should not be considered.
But you already told.
I have told her.
Okay.
I think they have listened.
They listened, yes.
Now also can they listen? With what we are talking?
Yeah,
Yes.
maybe,
Yes.
yes.
We are live, so we can.
Because we are live.
Connection problem? Because it's an error. Still it is an error, right? Yeah, something hello sir and ma'am. But this is different, huh?
I can't see the question.
Huh?
I can't see the question. It's very small.
Somebody is writing. Hello sir and madam, I have a doubt regarding assignment 5 question 2. but we don't know that assignment 5 question 2.
So
You
could you
can,
please type the question because assignment is not
no,
open
no,
in
you
front.
just say you can clarify with the NPTEL. That's all.
So Mausumi, it would be great if you can just type your question here because faculties are live and they are not able to see the question and assignments. So it's better you please type your question.
You write down, type your question. Type question 2.
Mausumi, what is your question? Please type it.
Just to type them. I think please type the question. Maybe he has gone to type. Okay.
Jitendra?
He has written how to type. So she's written. Any stem cell use in patients must only be done within the purview of an approved and monitored clinical trial with the intent to advance science and medicine and not offering it as therapy.
Question क्या हुआ?
Any stem cell use in the patients must only be
True or false?
Any stem cell use in patients must only be done within the purview of an approved and monitored clinical trial with the intent to advance science and medicine and not offering it as a therapy.
It is true.
So, whether it is true or false, not offering it as a true. Hello, sir, madam. No, this is another one. So, I would not give you the answer in true or false, but I would like to say that if the stem cell use is for a specific therapeutic purpose, means when you are claiming this stem cell as a product and it is to be marketed as a product, in that case it has to be under a controlled clinical trial. And in case it is not a product and it is a part of therapy, then it should not be under that. So you have to follow the stem cell guideline of the Department of ICMR and which has been published, the National Stem Cell Guideline, to understand this. But the answer I would not say you whether it is true or false. You have to make your own answer. I can just guide you in giving your answer.
See here and speak because camera is there.
Okay. Right. But it has come. Sound. They can't hear, no?
Most probably.
No, he can hear.
So he tested, he said that he can hear. So they can hear. But while he's speaking, it would be better if you see there because camera is there, no? So you can capture your face.
Right.
You can read the question here, but while speaking, you can hear.
Okay.
Next question.
Next question is only hello. So you can ask, Mr. Prasad, hello. What is your question?
Please type your question.
So there is a question from Jaya.
Site notification.
Jaya.
Yeah. Actually, what are the regulations? And in India, what is that? The questions are coming not, it's not clear. No?
So we can answer first the question of Jaya. That is the question, query regarding site notification.
No, that also. What is the site notification? Means, do you mean I just am trying to understand that if you have additional sites for a clinical trial, or when you are going to add on a site, that whether you should notify. Yes, there is a system of notification. You need not take a permission for inclusion of a site, but there is a process of site notification. So, if I don't know whether I'm clear with your question, but if this is your question, then the answer is yes.
So Jaya,
Sound
you
is
may
not
add.
clear. It says, sound is not clear. They say.
No, it is very clear.
They write no sound is not clear. Is it this one?
Yeah. They are
Okay.
hearing it outside, it is very clear.
Okay. This one? Good, okay.
So next question is, what are the regulations and in India about clinical trials?
What are the regulations and in India about clinical trial? Is it a question? So, if this is the question, so I would suggest you to read the about it. Is there any question which is coming from back, or if you are talking about the questions of regulations in India about clinical trial? Then that's the new drug and the clinical trial rules. I'm not very sure. It's again written. We can hear clearly. Okay. Now it's fine. Right. Thank you. Yeah, yeah. But if it is some question which is coming from the back, I'm not understanding. Mr. Marchala Prasad, actually, what are regulations and in India about clinical trial? Is it coming from a question which is before? I'm not very sure. Can you write, please? So now you have to find your own answer. So I won't give you the answer directly. You have to find the answer from my answers. So let's continue with the next question if you have more questions. She has written about that answer. What should be the answer? So I said her that she should now get her own answer. Right. Next. So they have to have the questions, no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Online, they will be just typing it.
What was the last one?
Last one is the same for stem cell.
Okay, okay, okay.
Thank you. So it's really okay. I was just understanding that it would be like a session in which you have gone through the new drug and the clinical trial rules, and you have a specific query on the specific different chapters, the way it has been presented in that rules, and you have a question. But anyway, by the time you type your questions, I would just okay. So I get a question. Okay. So let us get a question now. Right. Good afternoon. Uh, yeah. So can you type your question, please? Uh, by the time the question comes to me, if you can type your question, just wanted to say that this new drug and the clinical trial rules have been made in just as per with the international guidelines, and has actually the purpose of this new drug and clinical trial rules was to promote ethical and clinical research in this country, and also at the same time looking into in the right safety and well-being of the subjects. Right. How much word should be written for an essay question?
We have only MCQs. We don't have essay questions.
So there is no essay questions. There is only MCQ for your online exams. Um, okay, that's fine. Uh, Let us see. Uh, so, in case you know, this specifically to this new drug and the clinical trial rules. As you know, there has been 13 chapters and 7 schedules which has been presented to you through these online courses. So there has been number of definitions which has been included, right? Um, Thank you. Uh, right. So there has been number of, so please type your questions if you have more questions. So I just, by the time I can just say that there has been lot of new definitions which has come under in this new drug and the clinical trial rules. Yes. Okay, so we have 6 zonal offices in India. So it's there is a North Zone, Ghaziabad office. Also, we have many number of sub-zonal offices. So we have North Zone, Ghaziabad office. We have Mumbai, West Zone, Calcutta, East Zone, uh, will tell. I will tell about orphan drugs. So there is East Zone, then South Zone, Chennai, then there is a Hyderabad Zone and Ahmedabad Zone. So, and also there are sub-zonal offices like Bangalore, Indore, Baddi, Guwahati. So these are the Goa. So these are the sub-zonal offices. So what you know about the orphan drugs? So in this new drug and the clinical trial rules, we have included the definition of the orphan drugs. I hope you have read it and I won't repeat it. So you have to read the new drug and the clinical trial rules. So in this orphan drugs, there has been specific conditions which has been given in this. We have given a lot of options that if somebody wants to do a clinical trial for the orphan drugs, then there are lot of various provisions which are being given here, like accelerated approval, expedited approval process, and even the fees are waived in case of the orphan drugs. So these are 2-3 things which are in this new drug and the clinical trial rules related to the orphan drugs: fees waiver, and also that there are accelerated approval. Right. What are the criteria in India by which mission critical drugs and devices would be first tracked? So, as I say, I was just mentioning this, the new drug clinical trial rules have brought all these options of accelerated and expedited approval, the various conditions and the uh, uh, various criteria how this expedited approval or accelerated approval can be carried out. So that is there, and you know, in there, if you read through it, you will see that life-threatening serious diseases, unmet medical need, disease of special relevance to the Indian populations like the tuberculosis, H1N1, malaria, dengue, and also in case of chemical, biological warfare implications, some emergencies, if in case of some uh, emergency diseases outbreak, and also all conditions are mentioned in the new drug and clinical trial rules. How do you decide whether trials have to be conducted for approval for marketing? Yes. So in all cases, drugs are to be for any new drug to be marketed in the country, basically trials have to be conducted. So if the drug is like the new drug and the new drug is completely research R&D has been done in this country and it has been developed and everything has been done in this country. If you have read this rule, it starts that you have to start your clinical trial starting from phase 1. So phase 1, then phase 2, then phase 3. And in case of the drugs which are imported, and if suppose the clinical trial, the drug has been developed in some other country, and even a phase 1 trial has been done in that country, and you are coming to this country. In that case, maybe you have to repeat your phase 1 trial here if it is needed, or you can start from phase 2 and then go to the phase 3 as per the global clinical trial or the trial which are being conducted in other countries. So the decision of whether trials would be conducted, if you ask me, it is always that for new drugs trials to be conducted. Where trials not to be conducted are the various conditions where the trials are not to be conducted. Let me see. What qualifies a drug or device as a mission critical or humanitarian? So as I said, mission critical or humanitarian means, if I understand your question clearly, so when we say that it's a very critical or humanitarian means, I am not very sure with your question, but that you need to give this drug. I'm only going to answer you regarding if it is a new drug or a new device. Are you going to ask me about any drug or device? I'm not sure what you're going to ask, what you're asking in your, when you are writing this. Because if you consider me as a new drug or a new device, then the conditions of where it would be considered as a critical, life-threatening, and so as it is said that when it is used in a life-threatening or serious conditions or for a specific emergency conditions, in case there is no other therapy available for that particular drug or device, so that qualifies it as a critical. Now, but 7 subzonal offices in the lecture one, ma'am. So there is one more office. I do you I may I okay. So can you just tell me which office I mentioned? So I do you want me to say all the subzonal offices? There must be 7 subzonal offices. I start with it. So it's Bangalore, Goa, Indore, Vaddi. So that is 4. Guwahati, that is the 5th. Jammu, that is the 6th, and there is one more, the 7th office. Um, so there is Bangalore, I said. Huh? There is a yes, there is a Varanasi subzonal offices. Correct. Yeah. So there are 7 subzonal offices, including Varanasi. Right. I just mentioned some of the subzonal offices. You are correct. Which are the most important schedules and rules pertaining to city? Also differentiate between Schedule Y and NTCT. I hope that okay, just an example. So, differentiate between Schedule Y and NDCT is that there are a lot of differences between Schedule Y and NDCT. As I said, a lot of new definitions have come up. The most important in this schedule, in our new NDCT rules is the chapter for the biomedical and health research, which was not there, in which we have actually recognized the national ethical guidelines of ICMR for the human for the ethical guidelines of ICMR which has been published by ICMR for doing various researches are recognized in this NDCT rules for the academic clinical trial. And there has been a lot of clarity which has been the definitions, as you have mentioned some of these definitions like orphan drugs and all, so all have been included here. There is a very special definitions of novel drug delivery system which is very clearly mentioned, and also the sustained release or modified release. There has been the phytopharmaceuticals were already included in Schedule Y. But for this sustained release and novel drug delivery system, it has been mentioned very clearly that such sustained release or modified release or novel drug delivery system are always, like biological drugs, are always new drugs. So whosoever manufactures such type of products will be always considered as a new drug. It's like the vaccines and other biological drugs. So then there has been stem cell products, stem cell derived products, even the xenografts, all of them are included in this new definitions. There has been definitions of pharmacovigilance, there has been definitions of biosimilar, so many things. And then, as I said, the conditions for accelerated expedited approval, the various things have been included. There has been a chapter called post-market assessment, which includes the post-market surveillance, which is also a new chapter in this. So there are a lot of things which has been included, and you have to read it. Now let me see what was this other things. Okay, so as you said, what would be this coronavirus disease like when it is a critical? Yeah, when there is a critical, expedited and accelerated approval process are very clearly mentioned. What are the just an example? So please speak in mic. Please differentiate between new drug and investigational new drug. So when you say the word investigational new drug, did you read the definitions? The definition which is there in the NDCT rules, it very clearly mentions when you call it as a investigational new drug. That means this is can be called as a new chemical entity or a new biological entity which has never been approved as a drug in the country. When you say new drug, that means the new drug, maybe it has been approved in some other country, but it has not been used into the human population, the population of this country to a significant extent, or it has never been used in the population of this country, our country. But that can be already a drug which has been approved in some other country. Also, if you read the new drug definitions, there are many cases that drug is a new drug. A drug is a new drug if it is for 4 years. Within 4 years, all drugs, a particular drug which has been approved will continue to be called as a new drug up to 4 years. So anybody A second manufacturer coming with the same drug also attracts the definition of new drug. Third, fourth, so in number of manufacturers within 4 years, this drug will be considered as a new drug. In case somebody wants to go to a new dosage form, like a tablet, from tablet to capsule, or oral suspensions or injectables, so all are new drug. If it is a new dosage form, it is a new strength, even if it is a strength, so 5, 10, 15, 20, all are new drug. If it is for a new claim, it is a new drug. So all cases, these are new drugs. So the same drug can be new drug for n number of cases. And even if you combine two drugs, that fixed dose combination is also a new drug. But investigational new drug means it has never been approved anywhere in the world. Now what is there? Chandigarh, Bangalore, Jammu, Goa and Guwahati. That's great. Yeah. Yeah, correct. So there is no Chandigarh. So we don't say Chandigarh. That's Baddi. So we have the sub-zone office at Baddi, not Chandigarh. Earlier we had an office at Chandigarh. Now it is in Baddi. True. So there was a confusion, ma'am. Now I have clarified it. Okay. Ma'am, not clear voice. Please speak in mic again. It's not clear. My voice is not clear. My query is about, huh? Is it okay?
Yeah, that is fine. We are hearing it outside. It is very clear.
Okay.
Maybe at their place, some.
Okay.
Please
So,
check in your end.
yeah. Is it about CTA and EC approval? Rules say we have to submit EC approval within 15 days of receipt, but CTA got delayed. Okay. Then how to proceed for notification? Clinical trial approval got delayed, and how to see the process for ethics committee approval is such that your process is when you get an approval, everything is subject to the that you get an approval. You cannot initiate your clinical trial unless you get a ethics committee approval. So you can parallelly start both the process, applying to an ethics committee for approval of your clinical trial protocol, and also to the CDSA for a clinical trial, along with the clinical trial protocol for approval of a particular phase of clinical trial. So I'm not getting your questions properly, but I understand that both the things can go parallelly, and there is nothing like subject, but you can initiate your trial only once you get your approval of ethics committee, and you have to notify this to the, once you get the approval, you have to inform to CDSU. Now ma'am, we are not getting anything, please use mic. Now they are saying they are not getting anything. Audio is fine. If a student comes from a foreign country and does a short-term research in an institution in India, can she take data from here and be first author in publication? Does it require any clearance by HMSC? Now, this is not related to this new drug and the clinical trial rules, and related to this HMSC, but it depends on the institutions and what type of data and what is the publications. I really cannot say that whether it is a data on the drug or it is a data on something which is a new drug, and what is, whether it is a data on some human subjects. So I'm not really, I would not be able to answer these questions in this forum. Clinical trial agreement, yeah, so you can have a, okay, even if the clinical trial agreement with the sponsor got delayed, and then see, this is as per, it is up to the sponsor and the institution and the investigators. You can have everything parallel. So it depends on the ethics committee, the way they are going to. For regulator, you have to have the clinical trial agreement, you have to have the ethics committee approval, and we give permission for a clinical trial once the protocol is reviewed by the expert committee of CDSU and is agreed to your protocol. Then we give the permission subject to your permission of the ethics committee, and then subject to that you have the proper clinical trial agreement, you have your inclusion exclusion criteria, you have everything ready for. China, not approval. Okay, right, I understand. China has approved Roche arthritis drug for corona treatment without any clinical trial evidence. See, we don't go by any question, anything which is not in the, no, we can't answer such questions which is not related to this course at present. No, it is definitely not relating to this particular question whether China has approved Roche drug for corona treatment and all. I would just say that it is not safe to approve a drug without evidence for its safety and efficacy by a clinical trial. That is also correct. And also there are provisions in this new drug and the clinical trial rules where you can do some trial in exigency when there is a reason to do that. Suppose in case of a chemical warfare, in case of a particular emergency situation, there are various other. If you read the clinical trials and the reasons cases where the approval can be expedited, or it can be done without a proper clinical trial based on some studies done in the animals or based on some other evidence, everything is very very clearly included in this new drug clinical trial rules, and you have to read it. So we can hear clearly, right? It is compulsory for ethics committee to visit CRO for each period of the bioequivalence study. It should not be said in that way that whether it is compulsory. The ethics committee should be monitoring the properly. There should be a proper monitoring of the ethics committee for any study for which they have given approval. So whether it would be done by for each period or for each different, that has to be, that procedure has to be set by the ethics committee's procedures and SOPs and everything. So it's not that, but whether it is a compulsory or not compulsory. Schedule Y contains drugs which are not intended to human use. Is that true, ma'am? Schedule Y contains drugs which is not intended. I'm not getting your question, but are you talking about veterinary drugs? Veterinary drugs are not covered under new ND. If I answer you in the other way, veterinary drugs are not included by the new drug clinical trial rules. And if you see one specific rules in the new drug clinical trial rules, the schedule Y is no more applicable for the new drug clinical trial rules for any new drugs manufacturing approval clinical trial in the country. So it is no more schedule Y is applicable. Can you please describe this?
But for the veterinary drugs.
Yes, but
Veterinary
the
new
veterinary,
drugs.
it is still applicable. The schedule Y is applicable.
Veterinary new drugs.
The chapter part 10A of the drugs and cosmetics rules and schedule Y is applicable, but not completely, because schedule Y contains lot of things which is related to clinical trials. So those part is not applicable. So as far as the part which is related to the approval of the drug, so there is an appendix 1 and 1A and all those things for the approval process of the drugs, that is applicable for the veterinary drugs, not all the parts. So a little bit of it is applicable, but you can say part 10A is applicable. Can you please describe the step sequentially for human clinical trials after preclinical studies? So after the preclinical studies, once you have done with your preclinical studies, so you come with your preclinical data and your submission documents, which is there. If you see the second schedule and the fourth schedule of there is a specific schedules, you have to go through it in the new drug and the clinical trial rules, and you have to come with the data and the documents as per that, and to the CDSU. So if you start now it depends on you are starting from phase 1 or phase 2 or phase 3. So there are different steps in which you can come. So if you are now, I understand that you have developed the drug in India and you have done your preclinical data and you are coming to CDSU for approval. So you come with the phase 1 data. So phase 1 means you come with the toxicology data, which is very clearly mentioned in the new drug clinical trial rules, specific schedules, what are the data which you need to submit for a phase 1 trial. And then you come with the phase 1 protocol and submit to CDSU, and then you get the approval for a phase 1 trial. Well, it would be examined by the subject expert committee and you get an approval for phase 1 trial. So once you complete your phase 1 trial, you come with the clinical trial report along with the documents which are necessary for the drugs, and come again for the phase 2. And once you submit the phase 2, you come for the phase 3. And once you get all the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 done, then you have to come for a manufacturing permission, for permission to manufacture the drug in the country. So this is the steps in which you come, so with all your documents. A company instrument for detection of oral cancer, can we use the same instrument and do research on detection of, does it require regulatory permission? An instrument for detection of oral cancer. So see, some of the instruments, if you are now you are going into the medical devices, I would just like to say that I would before this, the question which was earlier there regarding preclinical phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3, I would suggest to read the specific chapter of the new drug and the clinical trial rules on the clinical trials, and which gives very clearly the stepwise how you should submit your information after preclinical. Now, regarding these medical devices, I think it can be taken up in the medical devices session instead of I taking up this session in this medical devices. Anyway, you have some, we just for your information, we have a list of notified devices and which are already published, and also recently we have a new notification which says about that all the devices how they are going to come up under the classifications, and there is a roadmap for all type of devices. I would suggest you to go through that particular notifications and gazette notifications of Government of India published very recently, which talks about the registration process and how it should be taken into. So all the devices at present are under regulation. There is no devices which do not need a regulatory approval if it is a new device, and if there is no, but in all cases whenever you come for a medical device in this country you need an approval. So that's the new notification says. No, schedule wise no more valid today. I have already said. Isn't it been superseded by the, yes, it has been superseded by the NDCT rules 2019. Yes. What happens if IND is better than standard of care in a investigational new drug is better than standard of care in a clinical trial? Uh, yes. Is the trial stopped and what happens next? Uh, I'm not, why the trial should be stopped, I don't know. If you plan a trial as per a protocol, and if you find that you have to prove the efficacy, the trial cannot be stopped suddenly. You have to complete the trial, you have to come up with a report, and which should be actually proving that it is found to be. As soon as you start seeing some efficacy in the patient, you cannot stop the trial. You have to come up with the study report. Yes. Why herbal if disease less than 4 is Ayush drug? I'm really not getting the questions. Herbal if disease less than 4 is a Ayush drug. If you're talking about phytopharmaceutical drug, it says that you should be able to identify four four components. You have to read it. So it's not says that if it is less than 4 it is an Ayush drug. It depends on you have to how much you can ideally you do the characterization of a particular drug to call it as a, it's not herbal if this is phytopharmaceutical drugs, we call it as a phytopharmaceutical, and we have a specific definition for phytopharmaceutical, and which they have to comply. And if you see the specific requirements, there is a table 4 under the second schedule of the new drug and the clinical trial rules which says the requirements. And if any herbal disease can, if you whatever you call this herbal disease or phytopharmaceutical can qualify to meet all those requirements, it will definitely become a phytopharmaceutical. I'm not getting the reason. Per a new rule, modified release drug shall be considered as new drug, so is required to file for BNOC before conducting B study for modified release, which is approval in India for more than 4 years. Yes, for any drug which is now a modified release drug, it is always considered to be a new drug, and you need a BNOC. Yes, it is needed. Animal-derived extracellular matrix are permitted in India for human applications. I do not get your animal-derived extracellular matrix are permitted in India for human applications. You have to say what type of things. If you ask questions which is in very general nature without understanding the content of it and from where it is coming and for what reasons, and it is not really possible to give the answer in that way. Does the phytopharmaceutical drug require separate protocol for clinical trial? Of course, they will require. It will come as the same panel. It is covered under the NDCT rules. Shall any note to file with respect to procedural changes in B study shall be approved by CLA before implementation? For example, change in sample separation procedure. Yes, means when you submit a protocol and then you make some changes in the protocol, definitely you need to submit for a post approval changes. Yes, it needs an if you change your sample separation procedure, definitely you have to notify and get approval, because you cannot make the changes, because if you are able to say that there are minor administrative changes and minor changes, if you can classify your changes, definitely you can notify it later on as a notification as a protocol amendment. But otherwise, if there are major changes, definitely protocol amendment should be taken from CDSU. What is this? clinical trial agreement got delayed, but we received ethics committee approval, right? Should we wait till we get clinical trial agreement, or we have to proceed for notification? As rules say, we have to notify within 15 days. I understand. So, yes, you should notify, and you should say that clinical trial agreement is yet to be received, and once it is done, we will also notify the same. Yes, you have to notify, as it is said, 15 days. Should be 15 days of receipt of your ethics committee approval. You should inform to CDSU. Yes, so you have to inform to CDSU, as well as once, and you should also inform that your clinical trial agreement is still it is pending, and once it is received, you should also inform that. Yes. Allowed to conduct bee study for controlled substance in India. I'm not clear about your questions now. What type of controlled substance and what type of product you need to tell.
NPCT rule.
And they can go to the NPCT rules and refer to the NPCT rules, which talks about all type of products. If you mention about these delayed substances or entry coated substances, or I am not sure about what is the controlled substance, but such kind of clinical trials are already conducted in India. So what is it? A show for academic trial which involves research on approved drugs, right? Approved dose and approved indication. For example, PG dissertation. Can randomization and blinding be done? Is compensation applicable? See, you can do any such study as per your protocol with the randomization and blinding. It depends on the protocol, and that it has to be subject to the fact that it has to be approved by the ethics committee of that particular institution, and it should follow the national ethical guidelines, as I said. So there is the national ethical guidelines published by ICMR for the human participants in the academic trial, and you have to comply with that particular national ethical guidelines. And yes, the compensation rule also has to be as per that national ethical guidelines in case of such studies. So, at what point should BA/BE studies be carried out? Is it after phase 3 clinical trial? It depends. So, whether you really need a BA/BE studies or you do not need or your phase 3 studies will be enough. So, it depends on the type of the drug, the type of the protocol. Sometimes, like if you have a drug which is being, you have manufactured the drug in the phase 1 and in the phase 2, and now you have changed a little bit of procedure in the phase 3. I don't know. I'm just giving an example. As I said, you have to go by my disclaimer that whatever I say is my personal view and not to be considered as the view of CDSU. But now you are coming up with a formulation where there is a change in the initial phase and now. So then you have to do, or in the phase 3 you have used a formulation, and now when you are going to market you have made some changes. Then you have to do a BA/BE study to really combine, match the formulation which you have used in the clinical trial and which one you are going to do your marketing. So it depends on it whether you really need a BA/BE study or whether your formulation is same or it is a consistent formulation. And as you know, in case of the subsequent new drug, it may not be through a clinical trial. It can go through a BA/BE study also. A subsequent drug can be approved through a BA/BE study. Slow down your speed. Okay, I'm sorry, so I will just slow down my speed. That's okay. Sir, you also say something like, so that I can slow down. Yeah. Is there any specific? I was trying to, answer all the questions, whatever is coming, typed here. That is the reason I was speeding up so that I can finish all the questions within 1 hour. That was my intention. I will slow down. Is there any specific requirement to conduct BE study for controlled drug substances and their disposal upon completion expiry? As I said, you have to read the BA/BE study guidelines, which is there in the new drug clinical trial rules. The requirements of all type of substances would be the same, and you have to, and there is no specific controlled drug substances, something like that mentioned, but there are requirements of controlled drug substances. Does it require to elaborate the chemical structure to call it a new drug? Of course, you have to have a structural elucidation. You have to do a structural elucidation and to establish that it is a new drug. Definitely. So chemical characterization is compulsory for any new drug. ICMR guidelines do not mention about the quantum of compensation. It says IEC will decide. Can the IEC follow NDCT rules guidelines for compensation in academic clinical trial? I would not like to comment on these, but yes, they can be used as a guideline to decide. It can be used as a guideline to decide. Yes. Can foreign startups conduct phase 1 study in India by setting up an Indian subsidiary? They can set up an Indian subsidiary and can start foreign startups by doing foreign startups cannot do anything unless there is an Indian subsidiaries here. Yes, yes, they can do if there is an Indian subsidiary and you have to and but the phase 1 study can be done in India only when the drug is already is developed and R&D research and development and everything is done in India only. In case the drug is developed in other country, in outside country, then the phase 1 trial cannot be started in India. It has to be done in that country where the drug has been developed, and with the phase 1 data they can come to India for starting again a phase 1 trial or going to the phase 2 trial. What is that? Is DCJ allowed to conduct B study for control substance like dexamphetamine tablet in India, which is not approved in India yet? This product, yes, the tablet, which is yes, there are new drug for which BAB NOCs are given. Yes, for approval in other countries, it is allowed. It is allowed depending on the protocol, the subjects, and as per the requirements of some other countries. Such new drug clinical trials are also. I mean, new drug, we call this also as a clinical trial. Such BAB NOC for new drugs are also given in India. If a parent molecule is modified and with the atom molecule and retains same pharmacological, is a new drug, is a modified one. Now you have to say whether it is with the same pharmacological properties. Is it a new drug? If a molecule, no, you have to give a very specific question to me. I cannot really answer in a very general manner. If a parent molecule, if you change your structure, you have to tell me that when you modify the parent molecule, you have inserted something or removed something. Your molecule structure is same or not? Is it the same molecule or not? If it is not the same molecule, you have changed. Even if you have added some salt, it is a new drug. It goes to the new drug. It cannot be the same drug. So you make a tartrate, you make a citrate. So we call all as a different molecule and different salt. Which all steps are required to go in this field for a B Pharm student? So you have to study your MPharm, you have to study your pharmacology, you can study your clinical research. There are a lot of this. Nowadays they have the what is that course called? You can do whatever in the field of the clinical research, and you can go ahead. A B Pharm student, but you have to study more. Not with the B Pharm. You can go. You have to study more for that. Yeah. Sir, please speak inside. We want answers from Sir as well. Okay. Should an institute have mandatory two ethics committee, one for clinical trial and other for biomedical and health research? Can a single committee be registered with both DCG and DHR and oversee both clinical trial? Yes. Yes, they can do. They can yes. Do, yeah. Yes. So next, acamprosate gastro-resistant tablets, right, is approved in India in 2002. Shall BNOC is required before conducting? In case in case the drug is already approved and okay, because it is a modified release, I again have to say that now if another manufacturer wants to go for manufacturing this modified release gastro-resistant tablet, they have to take the permission from CDSU and everything is needed. So you have to first start the process of getting a new drug approval. So that's the first step. And then comes the next step of being NOC. So that's my answer for you. Does a biological derived product formulation require to elaborate the chemical structure? See, biological derived product formulation, what type of structure it will be having? Yes, they have to. It depends on how much structure. If you say biological derived means if you call it as a phytopharmaceutical, yes, you have to. You have to definitely. establish or elaborate a structure. You have to establish the structure. Structure elucidation or characterization of a particular molecule is expected in the new drug and the any case of any drug approval process. You have to have the chemistry, manufacturing, and control. So chemistry, when we talk about chemistry, definitely you need to have a proper structure elucidation of a particular molecule for whom you want an approval. So yeah. So, sir, you want to say something to them additionally because somebody write that we need, sir, please speak.
Yeah,
So
but
please.
we should have answered we should have asked some specification regarding the current regulation of clinical trials and all this.
Right, right.
Madam is answering well for the general questions.
Also, but they are not having any specific questions like
No, if
whatever
we have
the
any,
chapters they have
yeah,
read or they have
definitely.
undergone.
Correct.
Yeah, that was.
Uh,
See, there is it is not expected once in how many months. There is nothing. We cannot say that how many is expected. It has to be decided by the training and the
Training.
requirement. I cannot comment
You
on
can
this.
ask
That
the
what is the
NPTEL.
periodicity? Yeah,
You can ask the NTPL.
but there is nothing called that the periodicity of the training of IC members.
Correct.
But the new drug clinical trial rule says that
the regulations are revised.
Revised, yes.
but what is the periodicity of the but it is mandatory that it has to be that there has to be this is a specific conditions that they should be trained in GCP, which is mentioned this in the new drug clinical trial rules. And in case the members are not trained in GCP, even they maybe they can be removed from the ethics committee. So those are some of the things which are newly included in this new drug and the clinical trial rules. Yeah, thank you. So I think it's over.
No, we still have 5-6 minutes.
Okay.
It will come.
Mm-hmm. Maybe, maybe,
Maybe.
maybe. So, of course, any training we always say training. See, in general, for a training or for an organization, definitely we talk about an annual training. So, at least annual, you can say that.
Good.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for the comment. Thank you.
Thanks.
Does DCGI encourage a pre-submission meeting through video conferencing? Yes, till now we haven't. A video conferencing facility is attempted to start, but till now it has not yet been initiated in CDSO. But we do have a process of pre-submission meeting already started. Not yet through the video conferencing. Till now we haven't started it. Any government subsidiary is allowed to start up a CRO in India regarding government subsidiary to start up a CRO in India, possible. It is not there is nobody has stopped anybody to start a CRO. It doesn't say that that who can start up a CRO or who cannot start up a CRO. Means doesn't nobody has stopped any government subsidiary. So far as I understand, sir, I hope that you
Yeah,
also
this
agree.
is.
So would you say something about Corona? No, really, because this is I am
It's
not
out
the
of
right person and it is out of my syllabus.
syllabus.
So today I am here to answer your NDCT rules, the training
Current regulatory
courses,
requirement.
and maybe a lot of things are being spoken about Corona in the television from the health ministry, social media.
lot
So
of
even the health ministry, yesterday there was a complete session on this. So probably you have noted that. Uh, can CDSO IIT and other institutions start modules on new drug manufacturing processes and principles. Of course, there are some incubators and incubations which have been developed for biotechnology products in some of the incubators, and there are also like some of the pharmacy colleges like NIPER and all. They have the process of developing drug and pilot, even the pilot scale manufacturing process are also available. And there are some other institutes which are also coming up with such pilot project, specifically NIPER. And but really not CDSU is going to, but CDSU can always support. uh, Tumorigenicity studies are not available in GLP labs, so will non-GLP data suffice? It's not like that. That we can, I can specifically comment. It has to be seen that it is not, why it is not available, and really it is not available. Such kind of examination is needed to be done. That whether really GLP facilities are not, and even when you say GLP labs, I need to understand that which lab are you calling? Whether it is having a GLP certificate, and so you are calling it as a GLP lab. So we need to examine when you say such questions. How are you post marketing? How are post marketing surveillance studies actually conducted? Especially explain us about the documentation part. See, if you go through the fifth schedule of the new drug and the clinical rules, there are three, four ways the post marketing surveillance is being mentioned. One is when we say it very clearly, the phase 4 clinical trial as the post marketing surveillance for our country. It can be when you have to have a clinical trial protocol. This means when the drug has not been completely, the safety efficacy has not been established, or there was some expedited review, or there was some the clinical trial was, there was some waiver given for the local clinical trial. There are many reasons where a phase 4 trial can be given permission, and it would be exactly the clinical trial process where all regulatory process, clinical trial protocol, the outcomes, scientific objectives, inclusion exclusion criteria, everything would be applicable, including the compensation. So that's one of the phase post marketing surveillance. So to give additional data, to have more additional data on the safety efficacy of the drug. And then there is post marketing surveillance, which can be like observational studies, and also or some non-interventional studies in the prescribed. The drug is being given in the prescribed, and you are going to get some data. And then there can be the one which is given as a conditions of new drug, that's the periodic safety update report. So that's, there is a format and documentation for periodic safety. It is given in the rule. You have to read that, the format of periodic safety update report submission. So these are some of the then. Also there is a pharmacovigilance, which we call the pharmacovigilance system has to be in place, which will, if you go through this new drug and clinical trial rules fifth schedule, you will understand what is expected out of this pharmacovigilance system, where you are going to report your adverse reactions to the pharmacovigilance system of India. There is adverse drug reaction monitoring center, and we have the national coordinating center, where you have to report your adverse drug reactions, and also to the licensing authorities. So, what is this? What's the future prospects in the? What is this? Can you just explain and elaborate? Regulatory affairs. They are talking about regulatory affairs. RA is what? RA. I don't understand. If you can clarify, what is the procedure for clinical trial of anti-cancers and rare drug? It's the same. The new drug and the clinical trial rules, whatever is the procedure, is same. Ma'am, our biological product is quite complex. How would you suggest to determine its chemical structure? So it depends on what type of biological product. You have to explain what biological product, plant derived, animal derived from the bacteria, virus, fungus. You have to say what type of biological product, and accordingly, you have to say that I really cannot comment unless I know what type of biological product. Can you start a module on drug design also? I start, or yes, there can be a scope. We can discuss with the CDSA and all, that whether a drug design module can also be really planned. We will give a thought to that. I mean, any financial subsidiary to start CRO? Any financial subsidiary to start? No, I couldn't get any probability of Indian GCP guidelines getting released sooner. It will be. It is still under preparation. The new one. Indian city rules refer Indian GCP guidelines. Yes. Of course, does CDSO have any particular format for audio? No, there is no format for audio video consent, and it is now revised, and you should be knowing that it is only for specific cases. Audio video consent is not needed for each and every case. Regarding phytopharmaceutical drugs, why it is mandatory to prove the presence of four active principles to make it more so that the structure becomes more consistent. And yes, really there is, you have to say that yes, this is not to prove the presence of four active principles. There may be one which is having the therapeutic, which is having that therapeutic efficacy. One of the principle active moiety may have the therapeutic, but you should be able to identify three more which will establish that particular phytopharmaceutical drug. For establishing your molecule, if a candidate is appearing for an interview in a sponsor company, what are the basics regarding city employer expects the candidate to know about that? I think you should read the NDCT and prepare yourself. That's all. GLP lab is that which is listed on the website. Okay. So they have a GLP certificate and authorized to carry out the stated studies. None mention tumorigenicity. Yes. So how can we do that? See, we say that any laboratory which has this who can do these tumorigenicity studies, and if they have it cannot, they may not have a GLP certification, but they can have the GLP observed in there, like Schedule L1 or the GLP principles are observed in this laboratory. Then such laboratories are examined or reviewed or inspected by CDSO and concerned regulators, and such permission is also acceptable. Such permission is also given to conduct a specific studies or to accept a specific study. So GLP principle is also acceptable. Is there anything mentioned regarding batch recall of? Yes, it is mentioned how will you, so where you are going to do this recall, batch recall of NDCT, because it is very limited use. When you are going to get a manufacturing permission for a new drug or an investigational new drug, it would be only for a specific use, for doing a specific clinical trial or for the purpose of test and analysis. You are not going to distribute it. But in case it has expired or it has been found to be substandard or its stability has gone down, in that case you have to destroy. So it's mentioned everywhere in the new drug and the clinical trial rules in the specific chapter how you are going to reconcile and destroy, or how you are going to keep your remaining part of the new drugs or the investigational new drug. Do post-marketing surveillance studies require IC? If the study is an observational or non-interventional studies, there has to be a protocol. If you read the post-market assessment, the fifth schedule, you will see that there has to be an IEC approval always for such studies, as well as for phase 4 trial. As I said, phase 4 trial is equivalent to a clinical trial. So if the sponsor does not supply the drug free of cost, yes, if it is phase 4 trial, it is very clearly mentioned that it is expected to have the drug free of cost. Phase 4 trial is equivalent to phase 1. Phase 1 trial, phase 2, phase 3, any phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 and phase 4 trial are all same. The conditions are same. So you cannot differentiate between phase 4 and phase 3 trial. It would be same. Only that the drug is already approved for marketing. And in that case also it is mentioned that it is expected to have the free drug, but in case it is not available, then such conditions and reasons for same has to be given by the sponsor. What is good method of clinical trials of drug? I really don't know about this. What is meant by crossover study? I think you should read and find it out. What is meant by crossover study? There are a lot of informations available to understand, and I would not give you a basic knowledge of what is crossover study. If a site is completed, if you have a very specific questions on the NDCT rules, I would be love, it would be quite acceptable for me to take it. If a site has completed a regulatory trial, can the data be used for publication of observations not listed in the initial DCJ submitted protocol? Probably not. Marketed drug can also need to have trials if it shows any effect. Uh, Yes, of course, you can have further trial post-marketing studies. Maybe you need, if you need to establish something more drug interaction, more in some other populations. Yes, you can do more studies. If in India and startup and in licenses or buys out, A technology, new chemical developed abroad. Can the Indian startup conduct phase one? I think I have answered these questions. It's asking the same question here.
Yeah.
In licenses or buys out a technology new chemical developed abroad. If you have developed a new technology abroad and you want to do it here now, so you have to manufacture the drug, you have to say that it is done here, and then you can study the phase one. Means it depends here. It has to be such kind of cases has to be examined. A government CRO conducts animal toxicity studies as per OECD guidelines. Will this data be acceptable in view of GLP safety data? Yes, that is very clearly mentioned in the new drug clinical trial rules. You can see that. What is the reasoning behind there should be 4 molecules to call it a pharmaceutical?
That is already answered.
I think I have
Already
answered.
answered.
That is the answer. I
Now
think
you can
we
say time is
finished up.
time
So
is up.
I think my time is up. And if you have more and more questions, you can
Okay,
put
ma'am.
those questions and we can have the discussion forum where I can give my answers. And I will try to give my answers in that. And thank you very much for being.
This last question, I think just 1 minute has come.
Okay. Can an independent ethics committee oversee clinical trial in a corporate private hospital? Yes, such scope is given. Are independent ethics committee empowered in the? Yes, you should read this and you can find it out. Yes, it is there. And the various conditions of approval of such independent ethics committee are also given. Yes.
We both can say thank you.
And yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for your questions and
Any more
if any
questions I
questions,
can address in the discussion forum?
Yeah,
You
we
can
can
raise your
reply.
questions and we can try to respond. Thank you very
Thank you.
much, and hope some of the questions were, I have we could satisfy some of your queries. Thank
So
you
we
very
will
much.
have more sessions where they can ask more questions, and other faculties would also come live to answer their queries.
Right.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks. You
Okay, very informative and clear they wrote.
Yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful. We should clap for you.
Because I said so fast.
Yeah, because that's
सर
it,
वो
that's it.
क्या
बहुत स्ट्रेस हो जाता है क्वेश्चंस आते रहते हैं ना तो आपको लगता है
फटाफट आ
ये भी
जाते
कवर
हैं।
करना है ये भी कवर करना है
क्वेश्चन फटाफट आते रहते हैं, आंसर दिखता भी नहीं।